Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Russ here with Mike.
That's me. I'm Mike.
In very hot Japan.
And that's all I've got to say today because it's hot. It's too hot for me to move my mouth.
It's really hot. I waited until it cooled down to grill some steaks, and then when I
you
was
eat a
about
lot of
to,
steaks.
I do.
I just want to say that.
Pretty much
I had
every
salmon
week.
tonight. It was delicious.
And when I was about to thrust the temperature probe into the steak just to check it, I thought, well, let me just see what the air is. I thought it's cooled down a lot, and it was still 33 degrees centigrade. That's about, 95, 94? So that was cool, right? And so it's been getting up to 95 to 97. That's about...
This is Fahrenheit, folks.
Yeah,
I know we have a worldwide audience. 35
to 37. It was been 37 most days this week. So,
but I think we need to cater to our American audience because they're our biggest audience at the moment, aren't they?
They are. American audience is expanded, especially after our Gil Rose interview. We got some Massachusetts numbers up really high, which is nice because we hadn't had a lot of listeners there. And so I hope those listeners keep listening. And this week, we've got a spike in our Swedish listeners. I think that's...
But is that why? Because of the Renitsky?
From Vernitsky, I'm sure. Yes, our interview that was released this past Friday with Daniel Bernardson and Marek Stilitz about the forgotten but now remembered composer Vernitsky and the new releases on Naxos, volumes 1 we talked about on the podcast earlier, and volume 2 that's just released this week. So if you haven't checked that out, get your music history lesson and listen to the conductor and the music scholar who's searched for all these scores and knows everything about Vernitsky, a contemporary of Mozart and Haydn, and who is now being rediscovered and performed and recorded. And if you haven't heard the music, it's very exciting, wonderful. We'll be covering volume 2, which I've listened to some of, and it's really interesting and exciting. And that'll be coming up in an episode soon.
I've already got it downloaded. I haven't heard any of it yet, but looking forward to it, especially after the interview, because now I've got more insight into who this composer is. Courtesy of Daniel Bernardson. He's really informative in that interview.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll pick up some listeners in Sweden, and we've still got our Japan base, and India is a strong number 3 on Ghana, and actually we hit 2,100 downloads. And
this week we have 2,100 downloads. We broke the 2,000 barrier early in the week. We're already up to is it 2,100 already?
Yes, 2,100, yeah.
So we got over 100 this week. That's amazing.
Yeah,
we did. Wow. Because earlier in the week we hit 2,000.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, we're going to hit 3,000 like in a week or so. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Or maybe not.
Someday.
We don't have those. We need more interviews to get those, I think. Those seem to generate numbers.
Yeah, we'll get some more interviews in the fall, something jazzy again, and then some more classical things. What we really need to do, though, is get some more responses from our listening audience. So before we get going with this week's selections, all of our listeners, you'll see in the episode description, we've got links to Spotify and Apple Music for all the music that we're going to talk about. And also on the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's where you can get all the music in one place, one list on Deezer, our preferred streaming app. Excellent CD quality sound and a nice catalog of classical jazz and almost every other genre you can think of. And you can also listen to the podcast there, because now they have podcasts in most countries there. And our username there is Adult Music Podcast. If you can't see the full description or list of all the links on whatever app or platform you're listening to, then come on over to our host Podbean, where everything is easy to see, and you can follow all the links to the music and other information. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. If you take a second to give us a ranking or a few minutes to write a review, that's going to help us get listed in the browsing category recommendations and help us fight against all of the K-pop, BTS-centered podcasts, which seem to be clogging up all of the music commentary category. And we'd like to rise up in there so more people can discover us and grow our audience. If you got something else directly that you want to contact us about or send us any direct comments, feedbacks, please do contact us by email. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, that's all one word, at gmail.com.
Yeah. If you do that, you never know what'll happen next.
You never know. We'll either ignore you or write back to you, depending on
or maybe we'll interview you, and you'll become. That's what happened with Daniel. Actually,
that's what happened with Daniel.
He contacted us, and we put him on the air.
We put him on the air, and he brought Merrick along, which was great. So
yeah, how about that?
Right.
Yeah, and we learned a lot about Renitsky, which was fantastic. Yeah, it's been quite a year. It's only half done.
Half a year.
Could still be more done. Amazing, yeah.
That's right. Next week will be the 25th episode anniversary. Actually, our top downloaded episode so far is the 10th episode anniversary because it has bourbon shots in the title.
Maybe we should just put like liquor on the liquor. Maybe we should just talk about booze from now on.
We should.
Because that seems to draw the listeners.
Number 2 that keeps getting more downloads every day is French Me Baby.
French Me Baby. We're going to be coming up with it. We're going to have another all French podcast.
I don't know if it's
French classical music podcast very soon.
Maybe we need more titles using the imperative or something. It just gets people, pulled
with an exclamation
in.
Point.
Yeah, with an exclamation point. Yeah.
Didn't we do that last week? And it was okay. I mean, we got a few downloads there. But
we'll see. I don't know. I don't want to think the titles have more to do with the downloads than the actual content, but you never know. Marketing is important, so we'll work on that.
Speaking of alcohol, I've got the summer drinks here. I'm going to go until my birthday on September 24th. I tend to drink for the cold beverages, and then I go back to the harder, warmer beverages for the winter. So tonight's beverage of choice is of choice. Wow, how about that? Beverage of choice is a nice Duvel beer from Belgium, nice. And I've even got it in the special Duvel glass.
That's important when you have that.
That is here. It is. I can show it to you anyway. I got the Duvel glass. Yeah,
that looks good.
Right. I remember being in France, and I was like delighted and amazed that all these different beers that you get and I guess this is true in Belgium as well, come in their own individual special glass.
Yes. Yeah.
And that just kind of, I just really love that somehow. So I've got a little collection of beer glasses here.
I had one of my favorite Spanish reds, the Breja Dorada, with my steak. And now I've moved on to the official adult music podcast beverage, the Knob Creek.
Single barrel.
Single barrel, yes.
Yeah, I'm off that for the summer. I'll be back in autumn, definitely. Okay. It'll be a nice birthday shot, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to that.
Yep. Okay. All right, there he goes with the Knob Creek. Got to get that break there. All right, off to the music. Here we go. Classical music first. And this week, our first choice out of the gate is the next release in the Haydn 2032 project, number 10, called Les heures du jour, which means the hours of the day. It really should be, I guess it is the hours of the day. All right, and this is part of the Haydn 2032 project by Giovanni Antonini, and in this case, Il Giardino Armonico. Now, the project has featured, I believe, 3 different ensembles, all conducted by Antonini, so it's really his project, but he's sticking with his main group, Giardino Armonico, recently, and this is on Alpha Records. Now, we actually did, the reason I wanted to do this, first of all, I liked the program, but second of all, I really wanted to check this out, because when number 9 came out, I thought that those particular Haydn scores were really hard driven. They were very aggressive it was almost a sadomasochistic listen, because it just felt like those works were just being beaten to death.
They're driving ahead on that.
Yeah, they're driving hard, like kind of a horse in a sleet storm. Is just being pushed or something. Mm-hmm. Well, I am delighted to say that Volume 10 here, Les Heures du Jour, calms down a bit. I mean, this is kind of more of what we expect from this series and from Il Giardino Armonico. Now, I would very much like to think that Mr. Antonini listened to the Adult Music Podcast and said, maybe I did drive those pieces a little hard. I'm going to back off a little bit. But then I checked the recording date, and this was recorded in 2019, so long before we even had the idea for the podcast. So we had no influence on this recording whatsoever. They kind of adjusted themselves, and they probably wanted that aggressive sound for those particular recordings. I don't know why. Anyway, this particular recording has 3 Haydn symphonies, numbers 6, 7, and 8. Now, you got to remember, Haydn's symphonies number up to 104. All right, he was composing like one a week, I guess, for the Esterházy family in Austria when he was employed by them. And these were among the first works he composed for them, because they were composed around the year 1761, possibly earlier, but I think they had to have been performed there. And the 3 symphonies, number 6 is called Le Matin, the morning. Number 7 is Le Midi, the afternoon. Why the French titles when he's working for an Austrian court? I kind of don't get that thing. Really. Yeah, it could have been. French was the universal political language, so I guess before English took over, right. I guess after the war, World War II. But and then symphony number 8 is Le Soir, which is the evening. All right, and then we end with Mozart's Serenade Notturna. Okay. Nighttime Serenade, okay? Serenade, by the way, literally means like evening music. So this piece's name really is Nocturnal Evening Music. So I guess it's for when the sun finally is completely down and it's nighttime. Does anyone, by the way, know what the opposite of a serenata is? A serenade? It's morning music. It's an aubade or alborada in Spanish. Okay. Yeah. I forget in Italian. I don't remember. But anyway, there is such a thing as a morning piece too. The one that you go onto your lady's balcony and kind of play your mandolin and get flower pots thrown at you in the morning.
I do that all the time.
Everybody up.
Take my mandolin out on the balcony.
Yeah. I guess somebody must have thought it was romantic. I mean, you had to make like a total fool of yourself back in those days. I guess you still do, really, but just in different ways. All right. Anyway. Okay. All I really have to say about these is, okay, so the first one, Le Matin, starts with this kind of imitation of a sunrise. You get the string instruments coming in gradually, sort of like this, with this building sort of momentum, sort of like a sunrise in sound. And then it goes into a classical melody from there. The melodies are, I wouldn't call them relaxed. They're sharply outlined, but they're not driven. There's a lot of detail. This is also a period instruments recording, and there's a kind of roughness to the whole sound. Those gut strings that they use kind of sort of saturate the entire kind of frequency range that you're hearing. And I really enjoy that because the roughness kind of makes me feel like it's a little like rock and roll or something. It's kind of there's something like kind of scratchy or not terribly shiny
distortion
about it.
On the amp a little bit.
Yeah, well, no distortion though, but there is a lot of kind of like a roughness to it. And I really like that. Also, we have the those wonderful brass instruments from the times that kind of sound like you're on a turkey hunt sort of thing.
Yeah, plumbing.
Except that they're expertly played here. It's really nice. Yeah, and these reed instruments, that just sound a lot different than today's. Yeah, this ensemble again, they're mainly concerned with the rhythm. So there's kind of like that sprung Italian rhythm to all 3 of these symphonies, and I liked. Also, what can I say about this? Their sense of melody too. The way we're going to be talking a lot about melody today, I think, because we have this ensemble are exceptionally good at just sort of outlining, shaping melodies. It's almost like they kind of think of it as like, you almost kind of feel like it's kind of clay, and they're molding it as they play it, and it just comes out as really original sounding. You know, it doesn't really sound like any other performance, and I would say that's true of this entire set. Okay, Matin, and Le Soir. Okay, the last piece by Mozart is pretty famous, and I had to remark on this. They kind of come up with a there's sort of a uniformity to the beginning of this. They don't really make it sound as like a march. Like the beginning almost is like in a march sort of rhythm. Dun, dun, okay, and they kind of even it out somehow, so that it kind of the melody really comes through more, and it just feels really appealing. Like the percussion, I'm not coming up with words tonight. I don't know what's happening here. It doesn't really overpower the listener. They're sort of subtly done. It's a very melodic performance of this work, which is great for Mozart. This is probably one of my favorite recordings of the Serenata Notturna. I really like it in this instrumentation, these period instruments. So I would definitely give this a listen. And I want to say the Haydn 2032 project is back on track, if it ever wasn't. Volume 9 was a little getting a little into the off track there, but no, this is really a beautiful recording, really enjoyable, and kind of exciting too, because of the novelty of the period instrument sound and the wonderful melodies. So there you go. That's what I have to say. Give it a listen.
Yeah, I like this. I like 9 too. I mean, it did sound a bit amped up. Like they might have had some
they might have been coked out with
amphetamines or something in the system when they did that. But here, I wrote spirited but not too fast performances. Things are going along, but it doesn't get out of hand. And Antonini gets a lot of dynamic contrasts. And
that's right, he does.
I feel like he knows these pieces well, and he really highlights the unexpected turns in the compositions. So it feels very fresh as a Haydn to me. It's like he was bringing out the where the little twists are. He's really ready to build those up.
And Haydn was a bit of a practical joker harmonically, so it's kind of nice to hear that.
And so he really sets those up and then brings those in with good accents and make sure that you notice them. And it's also helped out by the recording, which is very clean and detailed, but not in a overly sort of trebly way or something. It's quite rich in the character. So these period instruments actually sound really nice in there. So overall, this is really enjoyable. I was listening to it mostly in the mornings a lot, but whatever I was doing while I was listening to it, I found myself drawn in when, those sort of harmonic shifts happened or something dynamic, because he really seemed to set those up well and caught my attention, even if I wasn't, paying attention, through all of them, and would come back to it. And I said, wow, this sounds really great. And the balance is really nice. So a really good volume here in this series.
I actually listened to these. I used the Indian raga approach to listen to these, because ragas are supposed to be, played at a certain time of day. They have so I kind of listened to the first one when I woke up, and then the second one at noon, and the third one in the evening, and then the Mozart later on. It was kind of that didn't really aid my listening or understanding or anything like that, but it just broke it up and allowed me to get through the whole recording in a single day. It's a very long recording. It's an hour and 20 minutes, so pretty much an entire CD's length. But I really liked it a lot. I'll definitely go back to this one. I want to say, by the way, that number 4 in this series remains the best one. So if you're curious, if you don't necessarily want to hear this one, I would give this a listen, though. It's good. But if you want to start with the best one, see what they've done. Number 4, Volume 4, is the one to hear first, or I think is the best one. But this one's up there. It's one of the better ones. Give it a listen. I like it a lot. Okay, onward. to a name that a new pianist. Her first recording. Her name is Elena Fischer-Dieskau. Now, if you're suddenly perked up at hearing that name, you're probably curious about that very famous family name. Elena Fischer-Dieskau, of course, the great baritone. It reminds us of the great baritone Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, the great 20th century German baritone. And if you made that connection, you are correct to do so, because Elena is his granddaughter. Okay, and she's a pianist. She's not a singer. She's a pianist, and I have to say, quite a good one. This is her first recording on the Delphian label, which is based in Scotland, of all places. Wow. She is on the staff at the St. Mary's. I don't know what the actual name of the school is. I should probably look this up. St. Mary's in Scotland. She's on the music staff there. St. Mary's Music School. Okay. So that's where she teaches. We have a really striking cover photo of her with her highly sculpted eyelashes looking directly into the camera. She's got that Fischer-Dieskau dimple on her chin there. Anyway, very striking. This cover image kind of reminds me of the 1920s somehow. Kind of.
She looks.
Yeah.
She looks rather stern in this picture.
Yeah. Okay, so this is her first recital, and it's a pretty interesting program. Familiar works. We hear Brahms' Seven Fantasies, Opus 116, Schumann's Kreisleriana, Opus 16, and Brahms' Two Rhapsodies, Opus 79. Now, what's interesting about them is, let's think about this. These are all works that Clara Wieck, who was later named Clara Schumann, she married Robert, saw in manuscript before they became the famous works that they were. And she was married to Robert Schumann. She was really great friends with Johannes Brahms, and she was also one of the great pianists of the 19th century. So she would have read all of these in manuscript, and that's sort of a key about how to listen to this recording. Elena Fischer-Dieskau sort of. These are all very fresh-sounding performances, and I got the impression that she kind of took on this sort of Clara Schumann alter ego and sort of approached these works as though she was seeing them for the first time, like her, that these composers had given them to her to look at before they released them to get her okay on them, sort of her sort of seal of approval. And they sound... Oh, there's really a lot to say about this, and I'm not going to say it all because there's just so much. But anyway, let's just kind of talk about this. The first works we hear are the Seven Fantasies by Brahms. The first one is a pretty well-known capriccio, and I often think about this one as galloping when I hear that rhythm, but this one doesn't gallop like it usually does in other pianists' hands. She goes for a more dramatic effect in her attention to line and rhythmic subtleties, and that's going to be kind of a key to this entire recording. The second work is pensive. She pulls out all the sections. This is a pretty amazing. The second one, it's an intermezzo, and I had heard this before, but she has this way of slightly pausing before like a new section of music with a whole different tonal color and sort of a rhythmic profile starts, and it kind of made me realize how complicated this work really is, because in the past I just used to hear it just kind of pass by as like a single relatively short work. It's about 4 minutes long, but there's a lot in it, and she really makes you hear all of it. I was pretty impressed by that, so I'm really being hooked in by this recording at this point. I want to say something about her grandfather Dietrich's approach to music. He made some indelible recordings of the German leader, and he was absolutely hypnotic as a singer. Obviously high attention to melody, but he had this really special way, and I'm wondering if we're seeing a little bit of that here. Elena Fischer-Dieskau is able to just pull out a lot of the complexity of this music and make you hear it and make you understand it as well. You maybe not, that you're going to talk about it intellectually, but just understand that there's something kind of complex happening here. I didn't realize how much this second work in this the second fantasy, the intermezzo, changed as it went on. There's something else about, I should probably say this overall about the recording. The two the seven fantasies and the two Rhapsodies are kind of like the bread in this sandwich, and the Schumann is the meat. Okay, sort of in the middle. Now the Brahms works are sort of recorded differently than the Schumann, and they're also played differently. It's hard to say whether it's the pianist sound or the engineer who's causing it. It's probably a combination of both. But the Brahms works, and you'll notice this right away in the Seven Fantasies, kind of make the piano sound like it's, I want to say that like it doesn't have hammers, like it's just like the sound just kind of like comes out of the instruments. Now, of course, if you listen, you can hear the hammers hitting the strings, but the sound just kind of emerges almost like you're not really hearing the attack so much. And I think this is partly her playing, but I think it's a lot of it has to do with the microphone placement. It seems to be placed.
I've got some comments about that, but I'll wait till the musical.
It seemed to be pretty far away from the instrument. Okay. Nevertheless, though, the textures are pretty clear. You can kind of hear everything she's doing. Okay. Now, this kind of makes me think that she might be a really interesting Debussy pianist, because it was said that Debussy played the piano like it didn't have hammers, like he was able to kind of get this almost magical sound out of it. She has a very soft attack on these, and I think she's being helped by the engineer here to get that sound. Okay, and we hear a lot more of that in the rest of these works. She's also got, I said here, a chamber music sized sound, and I'm kind of wondering if this is her sound. Now, it says here that she's played the second Rachmaninoff piano concerto as well, so I'm imagining she has this big hole-filling sound as well if she wants to conjure that up. But she's able to kind of make the sound intimate here. All right. Next we get to the Schumann, and again, this is a very different sounding piece. But it's also differently recorded. In this case, the microphone sounds closer, and we can hear the hammers on the strings a bit. We can hear the attack more clearly, and the sound is more focused. So I looked up the recording information, and it said it was recorded over 2 days in the year 2020. So they must have planned this out ahead of time. It's not two separate recording sessions, although one could be 1 day and the other. But this one has a completely different sound to it. I'll say just right up front that I'm really generally not a big fan of Schumann's solo piano music. I mean, I like the fantasy and the bigger works, but works like this, Kreisleriana, which are a load of short movements that just kind of go by, and then it's on to the next thing and the next thing. And now it's all connected, like structurally in some way. But it kind of, I don't know, I was never really a big fan of them because I can never really latch on to what's happening. But her playing is actually so compelling that I was actually sort of riveted listening to this. I think I enjoyed these works for the first time ever. And that says a lot for the pianist. Okay, so I think this is the... I'm not going to say the best recording of Kreisleriana ever. Certainly some of the best pianists who have ever lived have recorded it. But this is the one that made me pay attention to these works. I really enjoyed this a lot. Okay, the two Rhapsodies by Brahms that end, I know these really well, and then we go back to the old sound, the more foggy, sort of misty attack kind of sound. She kind of is rhythmically subtle in this. Oh boy, it's hard to explain what she does here. It's not quite as lively, but the thing is, it's really compelling nevertheless. The opening of the first Rhapsody is usually very kind of like passionate and sort of and loud, but she kind of softens it a bit and kind of makes a lot of it more uniform sounding as melodic line. She pays a lot of attention to melodic line and shapes all melodic lines beautifully. She's obviously thought about these lines a lot and paid a lot of attention to it. So I guess in a way she has that in common with Giovanni Antonini from the Haydn recording. This really has been a melody fest for me this week. I feel like I'm in good hands with people who are able to put melodies out. Anyway, what I want to say about this recording is that this is a pianist that I'm very interested in now, and I'm going to want to hear more from her. I'm very curious about how she's going to approach a few things. I thought the recording was... I'm really curious to hear what Russ is going to say about this recording, because the two Brahms works were very definitely recorded differently than the Schumann. And another thing about I noticed this most in the Schumann, but then listening to the Brahms again, I realized this. The microphones were probably placed behind the pianist, because we're getting the bass in the left ear and the treble in the right ear, which is kind of how the pianist would hear it, but it's not how you, the audience, would hear it. So I guess you're kind of sitting in the piano seat playing when you're listening to these. But anyway, aside from that, I thought this was really quite a discovery. I think you should give these a listen. They're pretty interesting.
I enjoyed her performance and playing. I thought the Brahms Fantasies are played very beautifully and passionately. But her sense of touch comes through them, and she never goes into playing them overly sentimental. Yeah. Which, this is very kind of passionate music, but she doesn't overdo the emotional touches. But her physical touch on the keyboard is quite nice, and you get a sense of her style with that. So I liked her performance there. The Schumann, I enjoyed too. As you say, I think it's a lighter disconnectedness in the work, as far as the composition style, and a little bit more playful. But she handles all the passages and especially the fast ones, with expert technique. The recording, I don't care for the recording sound on any. There is a difference, as you mentioned, between the Brahms and the Schumann. I don't like any of the recording sounds. The room sound, and I don't know if it's a phase or echo or something from wherever the mics are here. I felt like I was losing a lot of the clarity in what she was playing in the Schumann, in the recording there, which I thought was too bad, because her technique seems to be so nice. And then I also liked the Rhapsodies. She brings out the contrasts in the sections, and these build up to some kind of dynamic and also emotional peaks. And she always leaves room for that, so I felt like she really had a nice map of the scope of the compositions, and she left room, at the beginning to where she was going to go. But yeah, the thing that I didn't like is nothing to do with, her playing, which I thought was fabulous, but I don't know what they were thinking on the recording. To me, it sounded like in the Brahms pieces, they tried to get the microphones as far away from the piano as possible, almost that other room kind of thing. I felt like, the mic was like way in the back. It felt so distant, which was a shame, because I felt that a lot of the subtleties in her playing were not picked up very well in the Brahms pieces. And then whatever the room effect in the Schumann that was going on, it was just sort of like a strange bouncing of the sounds. So, once in a while I'll hear a recording where I think, oh, this sounds, like it's so close mic'd that it's stifling. But this was the complete opposite of that. And they got a room sound or a very distant kind of sound that just kept, making me feel like I bought the cheap seats in the auditorium or something, where I was behind a pillar or something like that. So,
behind a pillar. You can still hear behind a pillar, though. You just can't.
You could, yeah. So that was the only letdown. But as far as her performances, I thought they were compelling, and it would be nice to hear her do Debussy or something like that relies more on subtle touch, because she seems to have that aspect of her playing as a really intriguing feature. Yeah.
She's got a high level of musical intelligence to her. Not so surprising considering her rather famous last name. I think the entire family is pretty musical. I think, I was thinking about what you're saying about the microphones being placed far away. That was kind of my whole issue with the Stephen Huff recording that we looked at way back in episode 1.
Right.
Where the microphone was it sounded like it was in a few rooms away. It was really far. Yes. But I'm really interested in hearing more from her, and
What's this label? Delphian?
Delphian. They're Scottish. You remember Sean Sheba, the guitar player? Now he's on Pentatone, so I think this is probably going to eventually happen to her. She probably has a contract with them to make a few more albums, and she'll probably move on. But Delphian releases a lot of good stuff. I don't know. Maybe the Sean Sheba always sounded good on them, though. He had good recordings.
Yeah. Where is this recorded? Is there any information on the venue?
It's in Scotland.
Is it a church or is it a?
I can let you know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it said the dates.
Strange sounding acoustics.
Yeah. Wonder how, I should have looked up her age too. She looks very young, but she's on the staff at a music school already.
Everyone looks young to me these days.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Even you look young.
You know me.
Do you have those?
I have good genes.
Oh, you must have.
My pants are good too.
Must have some Instagram filters on your forehead there.
It was recorded in the Queen's Hall, Edinburgh, in Scotland.
The Queen's Hall.
I don't know what the Queen's Hall is like.
Whatever.
It's probably a big room, I would imagine.
I imagine.
Probably a concert hall. Empty.
Get those microphones figured out, will you guys?
The thing about recording in a concert hall, though, is I worked as an engineer like back in the day. Concert halls are engineered to sound good when they're full. So
that's true.
You want a full house, and this is part of the reason why in New York they would give away free tickets to, say, music students like an hour before the concert, because they wanted all the seats full. Because first of all, the hall sounds better because all these bodies are absorbing the sound, and second of all, the performers perform better when they see a full house. If you see empty seats all over the place, you're just not really that inspired. Yeah. So there's that as well. Okay. But when you're recording in an empty concert hall, she plays exceptionally well here, but you're going to get a big echoey sort of sound, and you really have to work with the microphones a lot in order to get some kind of a good sound happening. Now, if you're recording a live concert, you have the other problem where you're getting this great sound, but some idiot's going to cough and ruin your recording. So it just never works. You just can't win.
Someone's got the bug in there, coughing it up the phlegm.
They like to cough at classical music concerts. I don't understand. I never hear people coughing in jazz concerts or anything like that. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't like the quietness or the intimacy.
You hear the bottles clinking in the.
You can hear bottles clinking, but I think that's part of the.
That's all right.
Appeal, I think. All right. The last classical recording of the night is a duo by the American composer Caroline Shaw. Now, she's sort of very much an up-and-coming composer, very, very popular. She writes in these really different styles. She first came to my attention with an album that came out, I believe, in 2019, but it was a short while ago. It was called Orange, and it was recorded by the Attacca Quartet. So they're all works for string quartet in chamber works, and it was pretty intriguing. They were fairly simple works, but they had really interesting ideas behind them, and it got a lot of really good reviews, and I rather enjoyed it too. And I was very interested to hear what she was going to do next. Well, this year she's released so far 2 albums, both with the Soul Percussion Ensemble. Now, the first one of these came out in January. I've combined these together. The first one came out in January, Narrow C. It was called Narrow C. And I heard this way back then, and didn't want to talk about it because I didn't really think much of it. Okay, but we'll talk about it in a minute, though. But there's a new one out now called Let the Soil Play Its Simple Part. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to listen to this one. I'm going to program it. We're going to talk about this with Russ and see if I can find something to like about this. Okay? I don't think Russ is going to help me too much. Okay. Let me say, first of all, of the 2, I liked Let the Soil Play Its Simple Part better. Okay. Now let's go back to Narrow C. Narrow C is a work that was written in 2017, and it's coupled with a work called Taxidermy, and the Soul Percussion Ensemble plays on that one too. Narrow C has a vocal part sung by Dawn Upshaw, and Gilbert Kalish, her longtime chamber music partner or accompanist partner, is playing the piano part. in this. And then the sole percussion ensemble is also on it. Okay, now this piece, Narrow Sea, written in 2017, combines her Caroline Shaw's explorations of folk song and hymnody with percussion, like ceramic bowls humming, a piano played like a dulcimer by 5 people at once, and flower pots. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, oh, that's pretty interesting. I bet we could conjure up some pretty compelling sounds with those instruments. But she just doesn't. This piece winds up being very, very repetitive, especially in the percussion area, and it shouldn't be, because there are all these interesting sounds happening, but the rhythms are very predictable and very they're kind of dull, really. I wasn't so happy about that. Okay, anyway, the text for this piece, and this is a big thing with Caroline Shaw, but on the new album too. Texts are from the Sacred Harp Hymnal. And the Sacred Harp Hymnal is a collection of shape note hymns, first published in the 19th century. Now, shape note, do you know what this is? I had to look this up. This is pretty interesting. It's a bit of American music history, really starting in England, but taken up in America that I knew nothing about. Shape notes are notes that usually notes have like a round sort of head on them, over where the pitch is on the staff. But shape notes have different shapes. They have squares, triangles, and they're supposed to tell you if the note is sharp or flat to make it easier for like an inexperienced musician to sing. They would look at the shape of the note and they would know if it's sharp or flat or anything like that. It's pretty compelling. I knew nothing about this. Very interesting to me. So I'm pretty compelled. Like, this is going to be interesting. Well, it could have been. I don't know. All right. Each poem used in this piece contains images of water and joy in looking to heaven. So she's chosen hymns from the Sacred Harp that all have to do with joy and water. Okay, looking to heaven. And again, that doesn't really help the piece much either, because it kind of feels like a 20-minute long version of a person kind of saying the same thing over and over again. I wrote a lot about shape notes here. Okay. Now she says that, or in the notes, the piano serves as a grounding force or familiar memory that keeps reappearing amid the different textures introduced by the percussion ensemble. I didn't get this impression. In fact, I almost didn't notice the piano was playing sometimes, just because it just blended in with the percussion so much. The percussion really wasn't doing all that much that was interesting to me. So when the piano came in, it just sort of blended in. Now, the pianist here is Gilbert Kalish, a pianist who I've admired like all my life. He's got to be really old by now, because he played with Gian de Gaetani before he started accompanying Dawn Upshaw, one of these, a really great soprano with an enormous range. And I think Dawn Upshaw sort of was inspired by her. Okay. I wrote all these notes that don't really that I've really changed my mind about. Okay, and Dawn Upshaw is the singer here. Now, Dawn Upshaw is a singer, I remember, she's around my age, first of all. And she was a great art song singer, especially when she first came on the scene when she was in her 20s. I heard her many times in Boston, many memorable recordings I have of her, and I heard her sing many times. All happy memories. Here, though, okay, her voice is darkened as she's gotten older. She's got to be around late 50s or 60 by now. She's around my age. I'm 55. Okay, her voice is still instantly recognizable. She's still got that sort of earnestness to her. And she's still got a wide vocal range intact, but she doesn't have this immediate control over it. One of the things that kind of she gives this performance, most of the vocal line in this work is in her middle range. She doesn't really. It really is like a hymn, sort of like you would sing in church. You're not going to really challenge the church singers too much. You want them to be singing the hymn together. And these works are written like that. But you've got this great soprano there. There are times, though, in part two, where she has to go up for a really high set of notes. And she hits them all. But you can hear the preparation coming from a mile away. Whereas in the past, she would have just gone for them and just, sang them, and you would have been amazed. She does hit them, which is impressive enough, especially given her age. You're basically past your prime as a singer, as an opera singer, when you hit 50, about, maybe a little younger than that. I mean, your voice is generally blown out by then. And, but, okay, so she goes off the highest note about 2 minutes into part 2, if you want to hear it. And there's a pause where you sense her preparing for it, and that kind of was a little sad for me. Okay, there is, though, however, an impressive low note at the end of part 3, which I wouldn't have thought was in her range, but she hits it with a nice tone. I was pretty impressed by that. The percussion uses a lot of water songs, but there's not much joy in any of this performance. This weirds me out because the texts are all about joy and going to heaven, and yet the work itself just seems kind of joyless. It seems kind of pedantic, really. I don't feel like the composer really added much to the hymns. I think the hymns would have sounded a lot better in church with believers actually singing them. I imagine Dawn Upshaw is I don't want to say, but anyway, but I didn't really get much joy out of this performance. I didn't hear much contrast in Dawn Upshaw's singing from part to part, so the whole 20 minutes seems to go on in this sort of gray sort of tone. This may be by design, I can't really say. And that's really it. I didn't really like this piece much. There's also a piece called Taxidermy, written in 2012 for the percussion ensemble, and it uses the same sort of instruments, flower pots as percussion. And it begins a lot like Narrow C, where Narrow C left off. If you weren't following the tracks, you wouldn't know that Narrow C had ended, and this piece began. There's no voice in this, though. Well, there is later, this spoken word, which is even worse in a way. I'll tell you why in a moment. The interest in a piece with as much space as this piece has a lot of space. There are a lot of pauses in the percussion, and the interest has to be in the various timbres of the percussion instruments. But again, this didn't hold my interest for long, and this is a 12-minute piece about. Is that right? 12 minutes? I guess so. Doesn't say. Okay. 6 minutes into the piece, about halfway through, spoken text begins, and it's kind of this repetitive speaking by male voices. The pattern of the detail of, and these words get mixed up a few times until it finally settles on. The detail of the pattern is movement. So it's kind of like this arty sort of, thing that I would think maybe like one of your friends would come up with in college, and you'd sit through it because you were his friend, doing his graduation project. All right, now there's expertise in the arrangement. This is obviously what Caroline Shaw wanted. The piece peters out at the end. I didn't like anything on this recording much. Also, it's only 28 minutes long, which is pretty much just as well, because if it was longer, I don't know what I would have done. All right, now, do you want to say something about this before I go to the next one? Or
this is the Narrow C?
The Narrow C.
Yeah, the whole setting is a bit too like new agey for me. Trying to say what I liked about it. I did like some of the melodies in Shaw's compositions. I think she has a keen talent to write nice melodies, and I did enjoy Upshaw's vocals. I like the tonality of her voice and the character.
I do too, but I've heard her like when she was younger, and I just remember like how great she was then. Yeah,
so not having anything to compare it to, I still just liked her unique vocal quality. What made it insufferable for me is the percussion, really, and that's this. There's various things on here, marimba, vibraphone, like that. That's fine, but I don't know what all this like clattering sounds that are sprinkled through here. To me, it sounded like a horror movie of insects or something, and I got this feeling like giant bugs. There's an episode of the X-Files where there's this like these bugs that are hiding under a child's bed, and they this is like scratching.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to be water sounds.
Yeah, but to me, they sounded like
the poem,
like post-apocalyptic. What's the word I'm looking for?
Post-apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic, like roaches scrambling over hard surfaces or something. So,
oh man,
I just didn't like that, and I also don't like the synth sounds that are sort of in there. So I just don't like the setting of that, but. If I could extract the melodies and the vocals from that, but I just found those scratching percussion things a bit, too much for my taste. But
Okay.
Yeah.
You like the melodies. I don't know. I didn't like this setting much, although I think it's true to the hymns. I don't think they're her melodies. I think they're sort of taken from the hymnal. So they're in a limited range. And I thought it was really odd to have like a professional soprano singing in such a limited range. It's just kind of weirded me out. It's I wanted to, because you want to hear her do a little more. She can actually sing.
Yeah, I'm trying to find nice things to say about it, but
it was short.
It's not my thing. Yeah, it was short. Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to. It's not my thing. I really don't want to like damn this composer because I do like her. I did like the Orange album a lot, but I was sort of disappointed by this one, and not so much by the next one. I thought it was good, but it's just not my thing. The recent release now. Narrow Sea came out in January. It's been out for like half a year now. But the most recent album of Caroline Shaw compositions, with solo percussion accompanying her, is called Let the Soil Play Its Simple Part. And this was just released a few weeks ago. Both of these are on Nonesuch, by the way. I should mention the record labels. Is that right? I want to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Nonesuch.
Yeah, that is Nonesuch. Okay. Now, this album, if it were a standalone, if we weren't doing Narrow Sea, we probably wouldn't include this on this podcast because it really comes across as more of an alternative or indie rock or pop album than it does a classical album.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like songs, and the vocalist on this one is Caroline Shaw herself, and she's quite a good vocalist. She kind of has this sort of very direct, like her music. It's very direct, kind of simple and appealing. And I don't mean simple as an insulting thing. I mean it as like a quality of the directness that she's able to, project. Okay. Quality. She, a little bit, if you can imagine, Suzanne Vega, if you remember those songs like, Tom's Diner, things like that. It's that sort of voice. It's really kind of clean and, direct and not really trying to, kind of show off or anything like that, but it gets the job done. It's an appealing voice too. I enjoyed listening to it. Okay, all of the songs are sort of it's sort of like arty pop, I guess, with sort of art sounds going on around it from the percussion ensemble. Let me go through a little bit of these because there's quite a bit of variety on this album. So yeah, she doesn't sing operatically. That's the first thing to understand. Like Dawn Upshaw, who's an opera singer. Okay, this album starts with a song called "To the Sky," which is from the beginning. The first and the last song on this album are both from the Sacred Harp hymnal. So she doesn't write the words to these. This is by the composer. And this one has rock and roll drums on it along with the percussion. So that made me think, this could be like a club song or some sort of a rock song. I thought she sounded a lot better than Dawn Upshaw did. She's not as good as a singer. She doesn't have that training, I don't think. But she just, in the sense of she understands her music and she knows what she wants from it. So she's able to give it a better performance. I think she's able to put across what she wants more effectively, I would say. Let me see. Yeah, lots of indie style studio production. This really very much does sound like an in the studio sort of record. Okay, it doesn't sound like a live performance by any means. Okay, the next was Other Song, and she writes the lyrics to this one too. This is a similar composition to the Sky. The third piece, Let the Soil Play Its Simple Part, lyrics by Shaw again. There are no drums here, just percussion. I liked the timbres in this piece. Thought it was pretty interesting. A little more lively than we heard on Narrow Sea. The Flood is Following Me is the next piece. It combines Shaw's lyrics with words from James Joyce's Ulysses, which she sings. Next comes Lay All Your Love on Me. It's an ABBA song. Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus are the songwriters. Now, if you know this song, it was in the Mamma Mia soundtrack, and I don't really remember this one from when I was young, but it's a disco song. It's got this big disco beat on the original song, but that's all stripped away here. Here it's very spare and understated. I had to go listen to the original song. I didn't remember it from hearing this. I couldn't identify the melody. Not a big ABBA fan, really. I liked Dancing Queen back in the day, but that's about it. It was on the radio every day when I was a kid, so there you go. Okay, here Shaw's voice is accompanied only by the marimba, and she reduces the vocal line to monosyllabic utterances, which is kind of interesting without all the sound production in the ABBA recording. She only sings the chorus, too. She doesn't sing any of the verses in this. Next is Cast the Bells in Sand. The lyrics here are by Josh Quillen of the Soul Percussion Ensemble. The vocal harmonies sound altered and distorted in the mix. So here we have some studio trickery going on to make the sound really cool and club-like. Electronic sounds are used. Percussive ornamentation was pretty cool, I thought, in this. The solo instrument sounds like a severely distorted shofar, which is kind of like the it's like a horn, right?
Yeah,
it kind of sounded like a distorted version of that. Okay, the chant, it was some sort of Middle Eastern horn. The chanting of the title has a catchy, haunting quality. Okay, this kind of really made me feel like I was listening to club music. Next, Long Ago We Counted, lyrics by Caroline Shaw. This one has a similar saturated profile to the previous piece. The whole, saturated by the studio sounds. Distorted, manipulated percussion sounds supported by the highly produced vocals, which Shaw herself sings again. Next comes A Gradual Dazzle, lyrics by the Canadian poet Anne Carson from a poem in her collection. Her collection's called Men in the Off Hours. I liked the poem. It was kind of really evocative of the waning of the day. The setting is spare and highlights the lyric. Good choice here. Next, Avail a Wave Upon the Waves, lyrics from James Joyce's Ulysses. That's the second time on this album. She must really like this book. Only 3 lines are used, with the line All is Lost Now repeated most often. This work has distorted electronics and drums. It comes across as brooding music supporting chatty singing, so sort of 2 different moods at once. Next, Some Bright Morning, lyrics by Albert E. Brumley from his hymn I'll Fly Away. He wrote a lot of hymns. He was a shape note composer. Okay, this elevated composition reminds me of recordings of the music of Hildegard of Bingen that I've heard, because it's got like the lyrics are kind of melismatically set. There's a lot of like melisma or different tones on the same vowel, with accompanying drones in the background. Kind of put me in that Middle Ages kind of feeling there. It's actually pretty inspiring and kind of uplifting. The lyric is the second on the album to have a clear theme. When life is over, I'll fly away to that home on God's celestial shore. All the pieces that Caroline Shaw and everybody else wrote lyrics to don't really have much meaning to them. They're kind of more atmospheric. And the ABBA song had a meaning, but she took it away by only including the chorus. You don't really know what it is. It's pretty interesting. Okay, that's how the album ends, with that, it was Some Bright Morning by Albert E. Brumley. Now, I want to say, okay, so I liked this a bit, but it's not something I'm really going to go back to very often, I don't think. It's really not my kind of thing. It sounds more like indie rock or something like that, or some sort of arty pop music or something. I do like, I just want to say, I wanted to hear these because I do like Caroline Shaw's music, especially when she composes in a classical vein. She has a direct, natural way of composing that's very appealing, and I can understand why she's so popular, especially in America. It comes across on this album, her directness, and on Orange also, and I guess on Narrow Sea too, except that I wasn't too interested in that record. Okay, I think I find her style generally disarming, but I really didn't like Narrow Sea much, and I thought Let the Soul Play Its Simple Part really wasn't my thing. That's what I have to say about these.
Not my thing either. On this one, of the tunes, I guess the 2 that I found most interesting or listenable to me is Other Song and The Flood Is Following Me. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed the compositions there. The rest, this arty or club kind of approach to them, it's not really, doesn't really hold my interest much. And Yeah, I'd be interested to hear. I haven't listened to a lot of her other work, but in this kind of form, with this kind of backing and use of the instrumentation, didn't really catch my interest very much. So those two are the only two that really stood out to me as something that I found a little bit interesting. But the rest of them I could give a pass to on this. Let the Soil play its simple part, and and the Narrow Sea.
Yeah,
not my thing on these. Yeah.
I'll keep an ear out for her future releases. I'm kind of one of the things that these two releases have done is Orange was a set of like works for string quartet, and these two, one of them is just for percussion ensemble and it's sort of classical, and this one's almost like clubby sounding. Now I'm wondering who she is. She's got a lot of different styles, and that's impressive. She can compose in all these different styles. But generally, if you're going to be known as a composer, you're going to be associated with one style,
Right.
I mean, you can do, like, for a composer like, say, Toru Takemitsu composed in a lot of different styles. Okay, he did transcriptions, he did film music, but when we think of him in classical music, we associate him with this sort of really complex, almost like modernist sort of sort of post-war 20th century kind of discordant style that's kind of what we identify him with,
right.
Despite all of his other music. So I'm kind of wondering how we're going to, the style she's known for is going to be at the moment after these two releases, because I feel like this kind of throws a monkey wrench into that a little bit. Not that that's a bad thing. She's, people will like her, but I don't know. I'll keep listening. We'll keep you informed.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, the various artists in any genre who can do a lot of different things. I kind of like it if there's someone that I happen upon and they do some things that I really like and some other things that I don't like, but they don't do the same thing over and over again. And I find that appealing to, artists who have that sort of breadth of expressional things and take some chances. And, if I, maybe I'm just hitting on the side that I'm not really interested in on this one, but that's fine too. I like people who take chances and, explore their frontiers. So yeah, nothing wrong with that at all.
I think about this kind of reminds me of Toru Takemitsu. He did a lot of transcriptions for guitar, and he did one I remember hearing, I think John Williams played it, of Here, There, and Everywhere, the Beatles song. Oh. And it was really beautiful, but it was absolutely unidentifiable as a Takemitsu arrangement. It just sounded like something, it was really expertly done, but there was nothing in it that you would associate with him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It just sounded like a generic sort of transcription of this piece that maybe anybody would have made. He absolutely erased himself from the
that's interesting.
From the piece. And it was a little creepy to me, because I think you want to hear the artist, or the composer. This is our whole Western kind of ego thing. Ego. We sign our work, so it's my work. I created this, and whenever you do that, when you sign your own work, you kind of want to make it identifiable as yours. Within the work, it'll have certain themes that are associated with you, because it's your commentary on like music or on whatever. And when he does that, it feels really weird. We kind of feel our anonymity, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not much of anonymity coming up in the jazz section. So
on the jazz side, this week, did a little exploration here. Which I'll delve into as we go along. We're going to start out this time with the saxophonist Joel Frahm and his new recording called The Bright Side. That's on Anzik Records. Now, Frahm is a really in-demand player as a sideman. He's been played on over 100 recordings as a sideman, including dates with Brad Meldau, Maynard Ferguson, Betty Carter, Dewey Redman, Lee Konitz, Pat Martino. Those are big names, right? Bill Charlap, nice pianist that we're fans of. Vocalist Diane Schur, Freddie Cole, and another top vocalist, Jane Monheit. And he's also worked with Matt Wilson, the organist Larry Goldings, and many others. He's been part of 2 Grammy-nominated CDs in 2018, Freddie Cole's My Mood Is You, and Daphnis Prieto's Back to the Sunset, which won the Grammy for Best Latin Jazz Ensemble Recording. And so here, on this recording, The Bright Side, that was recorded in 2019, but just released now, is his Jazz Trio's debut recording for Anzac Records. This is sort of the result of a musical partnership that was worked out through a lot of tours and recordings over the past few decades. And so Fram's main instrument is the tenor sax. There's one cut with soprano saxophone, and we've got Dan Loomis on bass and Ernesto Cervini on drums. And so you'll notice there's no main chordal instrument, no piano or guitar here, which sort of sets the possibilities for what's going to come out on this recording here, because that frees him up harmonically a lot. So we've got all original tunes here. Keeps things fresh and interesting, starting out with tune number 1, Blow, Papa Joe. It's a nice title. And you get a sense right from the start. Frahm has a really nice tone. It's full, but also flexible. He's got a really strong upper register, which he brings to the forefront in this very modern sounding composition. And so since we've got no guitar or piano, he's got a lot of freedom harmonically. He's got great tonal control, so he can get in a abrasive tone or squawk whenever he wants for effect, and he's not straining at all to do that. The rhythm is loose in the drumming, but overall in this whole recording, and especially here, he's locked in really perfectly with the beat and in the bass and the drums, and his solo has a lot of complex rhythmic figures. So we're off to kind of an interesting start. Track 2 is called Thinking of Benny. This starts with a real funky bass groove. And then Frahm comes in with a lighter tone and tongue on this really swinging melody. And his solo is really creative harmonically and rhythmically. It's got some bluesy honks for effect thrown in here. And I really like how he can really adjust his tone to whatever he wants to do and whatever's happening, but he always keeps it swinging on this tune. There's a nice extended bass solo by Loomis here before Frahm comes back in and he trades 4s with the drums and then comes back to give us the melody again. Track 3 is called Boo Dip Dip. And that is kind of the sound of part of this tune. It's a tune, it's based on this kind of modulating riff that seems to end with a boo dip dip kind of phrase. And the rhythm changes up on a middle section of the melody before the riff section repeats again. So his solo that comes in after that, it follows the rhythmic variations on the sections, and it makes for a nice, interesting contrast here. Then he mixes kind of racing lines with funky riffs in his solo. And then after his solo, there's a nice energetic drum solo, and they bring the boo dip dip over the top of that to sort of punctuate before going back to the melody. So it's kind of a fun tune here. Number 4 is a little bit of mysteriousness brought in on Silk Road. And this has a slow, mysterious bass riff that opens up and gets some light drumming accents. And then Frahm comes in, and here he's on the soprano sax. And this tune has a really sparse melody with some interesting harmonic twists. The bass takes the first solo, and he keeps this sort of Eastern modal mood here. And then Frahm comes back in softly again over the bass. It's a very interesting soprano tone. It's almost flute-like. If he had used flute on this piece, it would have fit perfectly in, because that's the kind of tone that he's pulling out of the soprano here. And he works his solo in here, navigating the harmonic twists, and he gets up into the upper register on the soprano. And then he has some really blistering lines and some double tonguing, showing off his technique. But then he bring it back down to the melody kind of softly for the end. The fifth track, Omer's World, this one changes up the mood with a kind of funky rock bass and drums beat. And then Frahm comes in with a real kind of R&B-ish melody, some rhythm and blues coming in here. The beat changes up in a section that's a bit more driving before settling back. And then when Frahm comes in with his solo, it goes over to these two changing rhythmic patterns, which makes a nice contrast. And they're really locked in rhythmically here. The clarity of that without having a piano or guitar highlights, sort of the cohesiveness of the interplay of the musicians. And he ends the solo with this huge, funky and bluesy descending line. Then he comes back in almost right away with the melody. So a very tight, kind of funky tune here. Then we see we've got a French title here. I'm not sure how to pronounce this.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Qu'est-ce que c'est? I think that's it.
What
is this? Right?
Yeah, what is this?
And what is this? Because it's a swinging melody over these bouncing bass intervals that starts the tune. It's kind of a nice effect. And there's a lot of room for exploration here. And Frahm has a lot of ideas going really low and really high on the horn. He's comfortable in all the registers. Comes up with these little melodic riffs at every turn. And he also inserts some bluesy nuggets along the way. And when he finishes his solo, the bass picks up on that last riff to start his own kind of rhythmic and funky solo. And Frahm comes back and then trades with the drums before going over the melody again. So it's kind of a nice little swinging one. Track 7 is called X Friends. That's just the letter X capitalized. It's a tension building opening with bass and sax figures that kind of navigate over a fun obstacle course here. They have a little break.
There it was.
What was that? Oh.
And I accidentally turned the track on my phone here. Okay.
And then Frahm keeps up the chase on his solo with lots of challenging rhythmic figures. And then Cervini takes a drum solo and they bring it back with kind of phrases from the melody. Track 8 is called B-Line. This is a nice melodic swinging melody tune. It has some kind of intriguing chord changes. Frahm keeps the ideas flowing on this one. He had some cool harmonic overtones here on the low notes, showing he's got a lot of reed control and mastery over the instrument. There's a drum solo and some cool bass trades before the easy flowing melody returns. Number 9 is called The Beautiful Mystery, and this starts kind of mysteriously with these really big bass tones and chords on the bass that brings it in, a really interesting effect. And Frahm comes in over these washing cymbal tones and the atmospheric bass playing over these rubato, really relaxed phrases. He keeps the sax subtle, and Cervini adds really delicate textures on the drum set to fill out the mystery on this one. It stays in the kind of ethereal realm. And then we've got the title track to end things up called The Bright Side. This is a really happy bass riff that opens up over an even drum beat, no swinging here. But Frahm comes in with a very cheerful R&B-like melody. And his solo mixes both modern jazz phrases with some real blues-based licks. Then Loomis comes in with a punctuated kind of bass solo, and Frahm backs him up with some long phrases. Then we come back to the cheerful melody for a couple of rounds, and then Frahm has some fun playing around with it at the end before bringing the whole record to a close. And I really enjoyed this recording. It's easy to see why you would want Frahm to be your sideman, because he's a really versatile kind of sound. His tone, he can adjust to whatever style and mood he wants to create, and he plays in all those styles comfortably. But here on this recording, he's obviously doing his own thing, and he's got a lot of inspiration and ideas in different styles, and the trio format gives him a lot of freedom, especially harmonically. And he shows off his technical chops well, in his creative ideas, and the sparseness of the instrumentation shows that the interplay and the synchronization of this trio is super tight, and a very fine player, and inspired material and performances.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of variety on this album, but I think it errs on the side of funky grooves, and he seems to like the funky groove, and I certainly do too. This kind of kept me going through to the very end. I liked this record a lot, not just for Fram's playing, but for his group as well. They just kept the grooves coming. And they were pretty creative and catchy, so it just kind of drew me in. I liked this record a lot. I was really surprised by it. Wasn't really thinking it was gonna reel me in quite the way it did. But I think this is one I want to hold on to. I liked it. It might be my this, I don't know. This might be my favorite record of the week. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I like this. A couple of weeks, 2 episodes ago, we listened to Happy Destination by Rich Perry, which I liked a lot too, but it's a bit more out there and maybe modern. But I feel like on this one here with Frahm, he's really he has a very modern concept, and as far as jazz harmony and compositions, but he also has that kind of rhythm and blues rootedness that he comes back to. So you get that sort of bass and then insertion even in the other works. So he keeps it earthy, and even when he goes out for a little kind of journey into the modern jazz things, he brings back and inserts the funk into everything. So it's very accessible, and fine player. I imagine he can play just about in any kind of style well, and show off his personality. And he has great control, especially, as I said, his tone. He can do these kind of subtle changes to whatever emotion is called for at the moment in the tune, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, he's able to. It's one thing to do that when you're playing for someone else. It's another thing to have, like, say, your own compositions or your own arrangements, and then kind of come up with these ideas, right, like when you're the boss. Yeah. But he's quite creative and resourceful.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna keep an eye out for this.
Check it out. A really good player. He's been around, and now he's doing his own thing, and I think you'll like what he has to say. The next recording is a collaboration, and that's what intrigued me, because I didn't know any of these players, but they're all well established in our local scene, and it's a summit of sort, and it's called Altoizm, IZM on Afar Music, and this is a collaboration of Chicago-based or Chicago-born saxophone players Greg Ward, Sharel Cassity, and Rajiv Halim. And so it's a summit of sorts by these alto players that at least originated or came up through the Chicago music scene. And what's kind of unique is, usually these kind of summits, when you get like 3 players on an instrument coming together, they're a dedication to some, master of the past or something, right, like the great Bird at 100 on Smoke Sessions from 2019. There's the monster alto players of our day, Vincent Herring, Bobby Watson, and Gary Bartz. Also the great Dave Kikoski on piano. It's a great recording, but this was a tribute to Charlie Parker. So naturally, in those kind of things, you're going to have tunes either composed by or favored by the person being tributed to. And so in this one, we get all original compositions, which is kind of unique. And we also get to check out something more regional of these Chicago-based players. Ward has sort of become a New York kind of player. But like we did back a few episodes ago when we checked out the Jazz Worms with Ron Miles, which is players on the Denver kind of jazz scene. I was kind of intrigued because this is sort of a Chicago-focused album, and I didn't know these players, and so I wanted to check it out, and I'm glad I did. Yeah. However, the thing that makes it difficult is I don't know these players well, so I've got 3 of them playing, and there's very little information about the recording. So it's really hard for me to tell, like, who's playing what here.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I did a little research, and all of these players, they're all 3 fine players with their own styles, and listening to their own individual work in live performances on YouTube, I got a sense. Ward himself has maybe a little bit more of a tart kind of, hard to say, more articulated kind of style that makes it stand out from the others. And sometimes I can pick out his sound more easily after a couple listens, but I'm still new to these players. Anyway, a little bit on the players themselves. Ward is originally from Peoria, Illinois, and he's spent his years coming up through the Chicago jazz scene. He's also known for his composing talents in also jazz and classical realms, and he's composed for the International Contemporary Ensemble, Chicago Symphony Orchestra's Chamber Music Series, and Peoria Ballet Company, as well as the Jazz Institute of Chicago. So he does some composing work, and if you look at his work of ensembles on recordings on YouTube, you'll see he does some more modern type things with not only strict sort of jazz backgrounds, but some more poppy kind of things, and guitar players, kind of rockish things too. So he's quite flexible. On the New York scene, he's played with a lot of players, Lupe Fiasco, Tortoise, William Parker, Andrew D'Angelo, and Mike Reed. Also on this recording, the other alto player, Rajiv Halim, he's played with Rudresh Hanthapa, the kind of up-and-coming sax player who we've listened to before. Ernie Watts.
Well, you and I have.
Yeah.
The listeners, we haven't listened to it with
we haven't done it on
yeah.
the podcast yet. Yeah. Curtis Lundy, Antonio Hart, Von Freeman, and Mike Stern and Bob Minzer. So he's kind of established himself, and he has a really nice sound and concept too. And then we've got a female saxophonist, Sharel Cassity, and she's played in bands led by Cyrus Chestnut, Nicholas Payton, and Jimmy Heath. So she's got an impressive resume as well. And rounding out the ensemble, Richard D. Johnson on piano, bass, Jeremiah Hunt, and Michael Piole on drums. And so getting into these original tunes, starting out the recording, a Cassity tune called Cedar Grove. And this is a tune that's composed over the chord changes to the great pianist Cedar Walton's Fantasy in D.
I think it's Cedar Groove. Cedar Groove.
Cedar Groove, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is, it's composed over the chord changes for a Cedar Walton tune. And it's got some really hard swinging, really nice kind of memorable new melody that she gets here too. And it gets off to a real swinging start. What's nice and shown here is established through the whole album is the saxes are really feeding off from each other. And this is not a competition, but it's sort of a conversation that's bringing out the best in the other players. So that mood is set right from this first one. Number 2 is called Bembe's Kids, and this is a Halim original. This one is kind of really a complex melody tune, and it's the first that kind of brings in a tune of sub-Saharan West African rhythms, and it has some nice twists and surprises in the arrangement. And the sax solo is followed by some piano. That has some nice cluster chord accompaniment and two-handed runs. And so this one is a fun tune. Track 3 is called The Mighty Mayfly of Truth, and this is a Ward original. It starts out with some chiming piano chords under the developing sax lines. There's a really nice 3-part section playing in here. They've done these arrangements really well. It sets up a really kind of warm sound. And then I think it's Ward who breaks out into the first solo. You get that kind of tart and passionate alto sound that he has. Then all of the players solo on this one. The second solo is a bit more fluid and round-toned. And then after the third alto comes in, we get some exchanges and interplay between the saxes. So nice part writing, inspired playing here. Track 4 is a Cassity original called Thoroughbred. This is written as a new melody over the chord changes to Benny Golson's Stablemates. And this gets a nice kind of happy groove over these open-voiced chords. And the saxes come in swinging. Another nicely arranged section. Some nice solos. I think the first solo is Cassity here, if I'm not mistaken. And then maybe next is Ward with that more of a tart sound. But it's a nice original composition over these Golson chords here. Number 5 is The Time Has Come, and this is the pianist Richard Johnson's original composition. And this is a pretty ballad, again, very well arranged for the 3 altos. There's one sax solo here that's rather passionate. I think it might be Ward here. Nice tune, composition and playing. 6 is a Ward composition, John Cotton. A very nice bouncy rhythm section. All the saxes join in. And there's some trading of phrases between the saxes before a very rhythmic piano solo that builds with kind of some gospel feel. And then a nice bluesy sax solo here comes out of the changes punctuated by the piano chords. So nice tune here. And another Johnson tune finishes up this recording here called Last Minute. It's kind of a menacing crime movie theme opening. It's kind of fun and a really nice sax melody arrangement on this too. Then we get some intense sax solos and trading with each other that keeps the flames burning more and more. And then a drum solo comes in as they bring back in the kind of hypnotic riff before the alto theme returns. So this one I really enjoyed. As you know, a collaboration, a summit of sorts of alto players that I didn't know, but who all have, a high level of talent equal to, lots of the better known players. They just happen to be on the Chicago scene. And what I like is it's not just a blowing session. They've contributed original tunes and worked out really good arrangements that show the strengths of each player. The intensity is high. They feed off from each other. Yeah, you get some original music, and with 3 hot, really well qualified and inspiring sax players. And so it's a little gem that might be overlooked, but if you're a jazz sax fan, you definitely want to check this recording out.
Yeah, I think that's the key point is if you're a jazz sax fan. I liked this. I thought it was really enjoyable, but I almost felt like listening to it that if you're really into the alto sax, you'd probably get a lot more out of it than I did. I thought it was good. But I didn't really know these players and really, what to listen for. I heard it twice. If I hear it more times, I'll probably get more into it. But I'm going to say for if you're a big fan of the saxophone, this is really more up your alley than say for the general listener. I thought it was good though.
Yeah, I like to do this because, to draw an analogy with classical music, when we were talking with Daniel, in any era of music, and I think it's probably any style, like Daniel said, we tend to retain like 3 names or something.
Yeah, this is Daniel Bernhardson, the Ranitsky scholar, just for listeners to know.
And, so we remember Mozart and Haydn.
Right.
And then... we remember Beethoven and Brahms, and we can only keep, so much from, each period when it gets condensed down to something. But especially in jazz too, I think that happens. And of course, there are players who are, sort of the pioneers of a style or, so we remember on saxophone, Charlie Parker, and we remember, John Coltrane, and on trumpet, we remember, Louis Armstrong and Roy Eldridge and Dizzy Gillespie and Fats Navarro, Clifford Brown. And that's all, these great players. But in between, in the cracks, there are all these other great performers who just, by circumstances of time, or, maybe not being the most inventive, just get forgotten through time. But some of my favorite players are sort of, the lesser ones who I always come back to.
Yeah, this happens to me in classical music a lot. Yeah. The lesser composers, the ones who, aren't in the mainstream. My favorites are like the really famous ones, but still, you feel like you're finding something new when you're kind of listening to those.
The classic story in jazz is the tenor player Tina Brooks, who was featured on, I think, several Freddie Hubbard recordings, and then he had his own albums, and then those were shelved by Blue Note for some unknown reason. But we're talking like 60 to 62, when you have all these other monster tenor players out there, and there's probably only so much music they could get out and market at the time. And he became, his music got kind of shelved, and he never got the recognition or financial payback for it. And he had a sort of sad demise. And then his recordings were actually, I believe, released first in Japan. And then the world came to know, how do we miss this great, player? But unfortunately, he was no longer in the world to, be able to benefit from that later recognition. And I still think his recordings and compositions are really great. And there's other, sort of forgotten trumpet players, Tony Frisella, Richard Williams, so many. And so when I listen to music and art, pick something for this, for our, program, I don't want to just focus on the things that anyone can find anywhere. I want to hear something that slips through the cracks or is from a smaller scene, and, give some voice to, players out there who are just as good as players anywhere else, but maybe not get a chance to break through and get people to listen to them.
Yeah, that story you told reminds me of a scene in Woody Allen's movie Love and Death, where the dead Woody Allen character comes back for one last visit to Diane Keaton, and she realizes he's dead, and she tells him, "I've never loved any other man but you." And Woody Allen replies, "Well, that's nice to know, but I'm dead now." So it's nice to get the recognition when you're alive.
Indeed.
It's good. I guess later is fine. The family gets some sort of something out of that. But I think I'd rather be. There's all this idea that, after I'm dead, I'll be famous. Well, it's not really going to help you live a good life, is it? I think I'd rather be famous when I'm alive, and then when I die, I could be forgotten, because I think I would prefer that as opposed to being Mozart, dead at 37, yet immortal, Yeah.
I'd rather get paid up front.
Yeah, me too. Let your ancestors.
We're still waiting for these checks to come in for the podcast, by the way. So. Maybe we should.
It just started, we understand. But
should set up that Patreon account now.
Before we're before we're just a memory, people.
Yeah.
All right.
We promise that jokes will get better if you start setting the checks.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, the third and final jazz recording, we're a sucker for organ
we are
music in jazz. So if you haven't checked out the Mike LaDonna interview one, you should go back and check that out, because It's All Your Fault is an awesome recording, and that interview doesn't have enough downloads. I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah, it's really odd. People didn't pick up on it. I would have thought he's probably the biggest name person we talked to.
Yeah. And he's a monster player.
Surprised that
he is one of the few guys who has a complete mastery of jazz piano and jazz organ with an individual voice on both of those, and that's just a smoking recording.
And he's a really interesting guy as well.
Interesting guy. He's got a lot to say, and he's a real swing and groove proponent. So if you haven't listened to that interview, you got to go hear that and check out that album.
The album too. It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. But this came up, and actually I missed this, and I don't know how I missed it, because I usually the sites I look at that have the new recordings coming out always have these Ubuntu ones. But Mike, you said, "How about this?" And,
we actually picked. I actually picked this up from the Jazzwise, the British
Jazzwise
jazz magazine. Jazzwise's best jazz albums of the year so far, and this was on it. It's like, how do we miss this?
So this is the British jazz guitarist. Oh, of course he's British because he has a name like Nigel. And I don't think I've ever met an American with the name Nigel.
Right.
Nigel Price. So he has a long career, and he played with various reggae and funk bands in the UK before turning his attention to jazz. And his early influences were Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, and then more progressive things, John McLaughlin with, of course, his Mahavishnu Orchestra. And he played lots of gigs and sitting with the players of the time over the years. And now he's played on more than 50 albums. He's got 5 as a leader on his own. And he also played with the British organist James Taylor's band for 3 years. So I imagine that's where he got this idea for the organ concept from. And so on this album here is the Nigel Price Organ Trio, and it's called Wes Reimagined. Speaking of the great jazz guitarist Wes Montgomery, and this is on Ubuntu Records. And Nigel Price is a regular performer at London's Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club. He's played there over 500 times. Wow. That's a lot of performances. If I was in London, I'd go see that. Yeah.
Before you, because maybe you could explain this to me. This group is called the Nigel Price Organ Trio, and it seems like when there's an organ in the trio, they need to mention in the title of the group that there's an organ. But the person who's kind of in charge is the guitarist, Nigel Price. It always confuses me.
It's a little bit weird, isn't it? Yeah.
I imagine that the person who's named is the organist. But
you would think so. An organ is Ross Stanley. Yeah.
Ross Stanley,
but it's not the Ross Stanley organ trio. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's the leader, but I feel like they should just leave organ out of the name.
Yeah. I guess he just wants to emphasize that. This could be like the Nigel Price trio, including organ.
Well, that
doesn't quite sound so good, right? Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. Anyway, we've also got Joe Barford on drums, and it's actually not a trio for most of the album, because we've got saxophonist Vasily Xenopoulos and Tony Kofi. And I don't know either of these players. There's a couple tracks where they play together, and then there's a couple tracks where there's one sax, and I don't know who it is, so I'll just leave that out. You can investigate if you want to. And the percussion is supplied by someone called Snowboy. And I don't know who that is either, but that's kind of, either he has a very light complexion or I don't know what the deal is. But
I want to say about Vasilis Xenopoulos, to have a last name that started with X would be the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. And you can maybe like have a first name like Xavier Xenopoulos. Then you could just have the initials XX. That would be cool. Anyway, and furthermore, not only is it not just a trio because of these sax additions, there's also a string quartet incorporated in here. So, well, I'll talk more about that as we go along. But the basic format here is, as it's a kind of tribute to Wes Montgomery, we've got 9 Montgomery compositions, and then one jazz standard. I've grown accustomed to her face. And then they're not played in the original Montgomery sort of versions, but kind of refreshed in a way, mainly by giving a different or updated kind of groove or rhythmic treatment to the tunes with a new arrangement. And so that's sort of the approach that's taken, maybe a modernized rhythmic treatment for the Montgomery tunes with a new setting. So we begin with Kariba, that ends in an exclamation point here, and this is given a new shuffle treatment. The guitar and sax play the melody in unison, and that's sort of the pattern that's used in the arrangements on the album, and it works really well. And it's over this sort of hypnotic organ offbeat rhythmic backing. It's really cool.
It kind of sounds like a chicken clucking. It's like,
yeah, you notice that too. Yeah,
that happens all the way through. Well, you kind of become an expert at identifying like barnyard animal sounds when you listen to classical music a lot.
Yeah,
because they include them a lot of pieces.
And then this tune is the first of the three that has the string arrangement, and the arrangement is kind of unique, and it fills out in some spots. And there's after the melody and all these things come in, there's a kind of bluesy sax solo first, then guitar, Price's guitar, and then the other sax, and back to the groovy melody, and then the saxes trade solo phrases over the vamp, and the strings layer over that. It's kind of a nice, it's a nice tune to start with. I like the rhythmic thing, although I can do without the strings.
Were there strings on this one?
Yeah.
Because I complained about them later here, but I didn't notice them on this one. So this is the first
place they come in.
Okay.
Anyway, going on, number 2, Layla. The drum toms get things started swinging fast here, and then we come back to the same idea with this sax and guitar playing the melody in unison, and then the organ sort of interjecting these kind of punctuations for accompaniment. The organ takes the first solo here. There's really nice articulation and building lines in the solo. Then get a sax solo that keeps the lines fast and bluesy. Price takes over with a guitar solo. It's got some speedy lines, really impressive technical figures, and he includes some kind of chord soloing at the end. And then everyone comes back in and then gives a big break for the drums and one more time around the melody. And there's a nice kind of Leslie effect and organ swell at the end. This one is a really kind of upbeat tune. It's going to put you in a good mood.
I said cheerful for this one.
Yeah, it's very cheerful.
Yeah.
Track 3 is called Jingles, and we get a Latin beat to get things going here. Settles into a nice
the first
groove.
of many on this album, actually.
Yeah, they kind of update a lot of these Montgomery tunes with a Latin kind of groove. Again, guitar and sax unison thing with the organ backing for the melody. And Price takes his first solo. Here, he's fluid again, and he brings in some really kind of Montgomery-esque figures into his solo. More than before to this point. Then Stanley's up on the organ, and he adds some kind of cool harmonic tension to build things up. We get some sax, keeping it funky, and before we head back to the tune. And then we get a nice Latin outro with a whistle and a percussion jam before they close out the last phrase. So I'll kind of milk the Latin effect on this one. Track 4, Far West, no T there, as in just west. And it's a nice waltz tempo with drum brushes that comes dancing in for this tune. Again, sax and guitar double the melody, and the sax takes the first solo, and then we've got Price on guitar. And I like his playing a lot here. He leaves just enough space in between phrases, and there's a great descending line to the end of the solo here. The organ is up next and has some nice intense phrases in the solo. This is a fun tune with an unexpected minor chord change at the end of the happy melody. It's part of the composition, but that gives a kind of surprise finish to all of the solos. And then at the end of the tune, because it's a rather kind of happy sounding melody, but the final chord is the minor. So it sort of, keeps you on the edge, and makes a nice solo transition. Track 5 is called So Do It! ! This is kind of a slinky cha-cha dance that brings the strings back.
The strings. This is where I first noticed them, in fact.
Yeah, because they are sparse, but I think largely unnecessary.
They kind of... I felt that they were intrusive on this and one or two other tracks. I didn't notice them on Kariba, but now that you mentioned it, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to start noticing it there, too.
Price starts his solo on this one very relaxed and builds up. There's some really nice double stops. Then he builds into even bigger chords. Really tasty playing. And then the sax solo comes in, and then Price transitions into accompanying. In this, I was listening to the solo, but I really like his nice, tight kind of chord chops in the background. And those are really cool. And at the end of the tune, he has a really kind of Wes Montgomery fitting ending to end this one up. So a little bit too much cheese on the taco with the strings here, but
that's a good way to put it.
It's kind of fun. Track 6, moving along. This one's got a really funky beat, a really cool choppy organ chords here, and the guitar scratches behind them like that. It really gets it going. The sax and guitar come in, and then it's really got a kind of a gospel thing going on there. But this tune has a really kind of twisted chord change and break before the last phrase that comes back. And that's the hook to this tune. Nice Montgomery composition. Price plays a really tasty and bluesy solo on this tune. There's a sax solo and then a really funky organ that gets up high. He pulls out some different stops finally on this one. And he's got some choppy chords and then some of that technique where the right hand, or even if they cross over with the left hand, holds those high notes. And then you get some kind of left hand lower interesting figures going on. And then he gives us, finally get some of that nice Leslie effect that we've been waiting for, because until now he's been sort of straight toned on the stops. And so that's kind of satisfying. And then everyone sort of jams out a bit on the ending, and it ends with a nice organ rip at the end of the tune.
We love those Leslie effects.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we listen to these records.
Organs. And 7, Monk's Shop. This is another Latin beat tune, but the beat drops out for the first parts of the guitar and sax phrases, and it kind of sets the things in motion. The sax takes the first solo and keeps the spirits high. And then Price includes lots of kind of bouncy phrases and repeated notes that makes his short solo rhythmically exciting. The organ solo goes into a breakdown of accented chords, and then there's some drum soloing between the phrases, and we're back to the top of the melody. It's a kind of cool Latin arrangement. Number 8 is called Road Song. This is a classic Montgomery tune. This was also recorded on the Christian McBride big band album for Jimmy West and Oliver from last year. So you probably know this tune. It's one of Montgomery's more famous melodies. And what I like on this one, it's just the trio. So organ, guitar, and drums. And that really brings out the interplay here, especially between the guitar and organ. It's really tight and enjoyable. Price's solo here is really intense. He's got these really spring-loaded phrases that just wound up and they released the tension in his fingers. I really like those. Some really tight double stops on his solo phrases here. The organ solo starts out mellow, but it builds nicely, and then he switches into the higher register. And then the guitar and organ trade some speedy phrases and cool licks before they restate the groovy melody. And then when we get to the end, there's a nice swell on that last chord in the organ. So I really like this one. I imagine if you went to see the organ trio live at Ronnie Scott's, this would be something like what you would get. And that would be a cool night. I could listen to a few hours of just these three guys playing together. Really nice. 9, Twisted Blues. And this is another Wes Montgomery favorite composition. Starts out with a funky vamp, and sax is back and solos first, and then the organ is next. He's got some kind of cool disconnected lines that leave you hanging and pulling you back in until he kind of builds the tension with that and becomes more bluesy and chordy. Then Price takes over again, and he keeps it rhythmic and bluesy. And then there's a little bit of a drum breakup before they hit the melody again. And we end out curiously, but
this is a real departure from
with,
what we've been hearing.
With ballad, the jazz standard, I've grown accustomed to her face.
Yeah, so originally it was in My Fair Lady. It's a
Lerner and Low
song.
Yeah. And this one is, the arrangement is interesting because it's extended and broken up with lots of places for Price to shine. And he uses a sort of lighter guitar tone where you get some more kind of, how can I say, the lightness you can pick up on his articulation and what he's doing with his fingers and hear more. So it's a gentle intro just on guitar before the organ and drums come in softly. This is just a trio tune again, but then the strings come back in. Okay, it's a ballad, so the strings are there. Okay. And Price plays a really pretty solo before the organ takes over with his own tender solo, and then comes in later with a nice Leslie effect, really nice kind of chord wash with this Leslie speaker sort of pouring it all over you. But then Price comes back in with a melody, and it's kind of interesting. There's several sections where the guitar is alone, and then sometimes the trio and strings come in. You think he's going to end it, but it keeps going on, and then they go through the melody again, and then there's a really lovely outro for Price just on guitar, and he's got a lot of fluid lines with double stops, and again the organ finished things out with some nice swells there. So they really milk this standard really well, and Price gets lots of spots to shine with his ballad touch and little subtleties. Overall,
sadly though, there are schmaltzy strings on this piece.
Yeah,
really, it just kind of kills it. But the performances are great. That's that. So it would have been better without the strings, though. I don't know.
That's what my overall is a really nice recording, and I guess it's like a refreshing of Montgomery tunes. It's not a complete reinterpretation, but it's mainly just kind of considering more modern rhythms and new ideas in the grooves that could be had with those that differ from the originals. But, it makes them fresh and fun to hear again. Price's guitar work is awesome. And Stanley's organ is really great, too. It's a bit reserved. I'm waiting earlier, after we listen to, Mike Ladon's playing, which is always sort of, really intense and using lots of different stop effects and things. Here, Stanley is a bit more reserved, but, he does give us, those kind of tight grooves and some Leslie, when we're craving it. I like
he's not the star in this ensemble.
No,
Nigel Price.
Yeah, but he does great, and he's handling the bass pedals and everything really nicely, and the interplay is good. I like the arrangements with the single and double saxes too, but also just the two trio tunes. They have that extra space, and the interplay with just the three players is really great. The only thing. Yeah, the string arrangements, I'm not really sold on that. You could erase those off from here, and I don't think it would lose anything.
That kind of goes up there for me with the jazz suite, if there are strings in it. Now, if they're solo instruments, that's a different thing. If you listen to Stefan Grappelli, but I mean, if it's a string ensemble and they're just playing these chords. I don't know. That puts me off.
Like there's a few Cassandra Wilson albums that have like a cello, just a cello.
That would be okay.
Or Tom Harold uses that sometimes.
Are different though, because they want atmosphere, and that it can help there. I think, but here I don't really feel like you need it. You kind of.
But other than the minor string thing, I really like this recording. Wes Montgomery tunes are, they're all. I guess as I read one description of this, and it said sort of the track "Twisted Blues." Sort of describes all of Montgomery's sort of compositions as a whole. They're blues based with lots of interesting detours and things. Right. And then they add to that with the possibility of Latin rhythms and other kind of arrangements. And Price's, his guitar playing is awesome.
I enjoyed him just playing too.
Yeah, I like Stanley's organ, and Barford's tight on the drums. The sax players are nice. I like the arrangements. It's a lot of fun, and never can have too much organ. And this is a fun sort of exploration of just Montgomery's tunes, and you're going to have a good time if you listen to it. And I'm going to keep my eye on what Price does in this format. It seems, I really think organ trio and organ jazz is sort of the hot thing now. So
it's certainly something that draws us. And I'd like it to draw more listeners. I really like it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Because the Hammond B3, it's just like a cool sound. It's something you kind of think of. With organs, you think of church in general, but these kind of things you think of like funky church services, and then they bring it into like jazz and all those old rock and roll records. And it's got this kind of like almost low down spiritual sort of feeling to it. It's kind of like combines like the spiritual and the gritty at the same time. I really like it a lot.
I like it.
A lot of that here. Yeah.
I like it when that. Well, what did Michael Don say? When you get the exploding,
right.
We get that sort of exploding, and then the different sort of stop sounds you can get on it. It gives a lot of possibilities, I think, for emotional sort of development.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned this in a while, but we talked to Michael Adano. We liked his album so much, but there was an earlier album, the Delvon Lamar record, that I want to kind of make sure that we promote too, because I liked it a lot. I thought it was a real. They're from Seattle, I think, right?
Yeah,
and that was a really exciting record. I liked that too, and I want people to check that out as well.
That's a really good one. I think that has a lot of appeal to
really funky. I thought a lot of good funky grooves. People who like sort of jam music and groove music. He pulls that side in, with nice jazzy improvisations, but always over the, most in the pocket tight grooves too. So very attractive stuff. That was a great album. He's not as well known, but I think that's well worth your time to listen to.
Check those out.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And there we go. This is episode 24.
It was episode 24 of Adult Music. Lots of good stuff to listen to here. So be sure to check out this listening link for each tune, or catch all of the tunes together on the podcast playlist on Deezer, where you can listen to everything all in one click. One after the other. That's, 6 or 7 hours worth of music there.
It's a lot of music. The Caroline Shaw records were both very short, so it's kind of hard to, maybe together they make like one album, I think.
Yeah, one album, one together, sort of in that vein. So that's it. If you haven't checked out the Brunitsky interview, go check that out. Or for more organ insight, please do check out the Michael Adon interview we did back a while. And as we said at the beginning, please do like or follow us on whatever platform you're listening to. Send us a comment at Adult Music Podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. Also, if you take a few minutes to write a review, give us a ranking. That's going to help us get noticed in the browsing category recommendations, which will help us grow the audience. And we welcome all new listeners from around the globe. We're expanding our audience. We've got, how many was it? 1,200? No, 2,100. 2,100 downloads this week. So we know you're out there. We'd like to hear from you. Send us some feedback. Send us your comments.
Yeah, and thank you for listening, too.
Thank you for listening.
Nice to think that there are people interested in what we've got to say about music, because certainly where we live in Japan, there are many.
Not too many, but we know you're out there.
We've ruined many parties by talking about music and going into a corner together and not socializing with anyone. So,
we know adult minds listening to music are out there, and so we appreciate you listening to and supporting our podcast. And we'll be back again next week
with episode 25.
25. That's another landmark.
Episode.
The silver episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a good one. We've got some interesting possibilities there. And so we're looking forward to that.
How does that work? Your silver anniversary is the 25th, and the 50th is what? Is gold?
Is it gold? I don't know.
Maybe. I know 75 is diamond, and then what if you get to, I guess no one gets to 100.
No.
Yeah. I think 50 is golden anniversary. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll have 100 podcasts. Don't worry about that.
We'll get there, but I mean, I guess people who are married don't get there unless they're married when they're like 7 years old or something. Maybe they can reach that.
Not in modern societies. Anyway.
Not in modern times, yeah.
Yeah, probably not ancient ones either.
Maybe in the days of Methuselah, they kind of...
That's right. Yeah. The pre-flood world. People lived hundreds of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think you could have multiple wives back then too. So.
Yeah. Well, who knows what's happening there?
Yeah. We'll just stick with our one podcast for now. I don't know.
That's probably why they lived so long.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something in that. Someone should do a thesis on
that. Well, there you go.
You're welcome.
We'll see you next week on episode 25 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. And keep listening. And we're sure to be back for some more music. I actually have some more organ possibilities. May hold off for a little while. Yeah, we'll have to see.
I think next week we're talking about Wranitzky. I think that's pretty much a given.
Yeah, we should do that one.
Yeah,
Definitely next week.
We'll do that one. And then I don't know what else. We'll have to see.
We'll see. But, you'll have to tune in to find out. So we'll see you again next time on Adult Music.